I'm Kathy Rushing, host of the podcast Committed, the Entrepreneur Marriage. If your middle name is Restless and you identify with words like innovator, dreamer, changemaker, creative, independent, or you are married to an entrepreneur, or heaven help you, you're both entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. The entrepreneurial journey can be a little wild at times, like uncharted territory. Join me as I talk with others who are at various stages of the entrepreneur process. We'll explore the wisdom and insights they have gained while navigating the ups and downs of the entrepreneur journey. You'll discover that there are many couples who have found ways to thrive in both their marriage and business. Being married to an entrepreneur can be challenging, especially when that isn't how you're wired. I've heard many spouses voice frustration when it's taking longer than expected for a startup to become profitable. Why can't you just get a job? Is a common question asked when month after month savings dwindle, along with the hope of a real vacation anytime soon. Now, imagine that you grow up in a culture where entrepreneurs are rare, and the security of a government or teaching job is the extent of your occupational options. That is the setting for today's interview with Brad and Jooyoung Voeller. Since 2001, Brad has launched a series of nonprofits and for-profit organizations that facilitate online learning. In his early 20s, he moved to South Korea to expand his concepts, launching online academies for Korean homeschool families. When he and Jooyoung met and began their relationship, Jooyoung had no idea what it meant to be an entrepreneur. Ever the educator, Brad did his best to inform her, but understanding the ups and downs of the entrepreneur life only come through experience. At the time of this interview, Brad was in the scaling phase of DCI, Digital Creative Institute. He started the company in 2015 to provide apprenticeships for recent marketing grads, allowing them to gain the experience needed to launch their careers. Brad and Jooyoung were so gracious to take the time out of their busy schedules to sit down with me and share candidly about their journey in marriage and startup life. Listen in now as they share the story of their evolving partnership and shared passion for changing lives through education. Today I have Brad and Jooyoung Voeller, a couple that we have known for a couple of years. Brad is a serial entrepreneur and Jooyoung is one of the smartest women I know and funny in her very subtle way. Thank you guys for coming on the podcast and for the great story that you have to share.
We've been looking forward to it. Thanks for the invitation.
Good. You are so welcome. And thank you for carving this time out. I'd love for our listeners to get to know you a little bit of the backstory.
Sure.
Before we get into the meat of the story. So how long have you guys been married?
11. I think this is our 11th year.
Okay. 11 perfect, wonderful years. And you have 3 children who are, what are their ages now?
So Jubilee's 10, and then we have 2 boys, ages 8 and 5.
6. He's going to turn 6.
Turning 6, this is actually in 2 days.
Oh my goodness. He was just a baby. I mean, when we were meeting a couple of years ago, you were pregnant with him. How time flies. Well, needless to say, that's a very busy time of life. And so you guys are not only in the middle of your entrepreneurial journey. And as I find couples to interview, they're at different stages. Some people are just starting. Some have been through the process and are on the other side. But you guys are kind of in the middle of it. So
we really are.
Yeah.
And it does go by so fast. And I have to remind myself that through our entrepreneur journey, we're creating an opportunity, a future for our family, but only today is what we have. So balancing those two things out of striving for the future, that destination, and at the same time enjoying this journey that we're on.
Oh, that's so important.
That's so tough to keep that in view.
Absolutely. So I know that you met in South Korea. What in the world were you doing in South Korea, Brad? And what year was that?
So I've always been in education. It's been my career, education technology. In South Korea, I was there after starting an ed tech company in the U.S.
A what company?
An education technology company here.
Okay.
I went to Korea after having launched that, and in Korea was involved in starting up some academies that would help families begin home education. There's not a lot of diversity within education in South Korea outside of the government school system. So this was an opportunity to partner with families and churches and nonprofits and spinning up these the academic school support organizations. And that's how I met Jooyoung. She was a staff member for
conveniently.
Academies. Yes. Well, I think.
So you worked with like my church that I was going to at the time, and my pastor one day he asked me to work with Brad and to set up some like a ministry that they can support the homeschoolers. And quite frankly, I wasn't really interested in homeschooling and working for church at the time, but I was just going through a lot in my life at the time. So I just wanted some job until I can kind of sort things out and then get back on my life again. And that's how we kind of started.
Yeah. So that was just meant to be a real temporary
kind of transition on something.
Transition onto something bigger and better, right?
Yeah. And so it goes that we think we have life figured out. So how old were you at the time, Brad, when you went to South Korea?
When I went there, I was 24. And when we met...
I think I was like 27.
I think when we
26,
met... So I was
27,
like
something like that. So you were 28, yeah.
Oh, I forget that. You're an older woman, right?
You said you weren't going to go to sensitive areas in this podcast, Kathy.
Already went there. And Jooyoung, I'm interested in your... what you knew about entrepreneurial lifestyle. In America, we really take pride in our ability to create our own path and make our own way, and we celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. What was it like? But not every country is...
Yeah, it's so different.
Yes.
Yeah, in South Korea.
What was your understanding of entrepreneurial endeavor?
So I still vividly remember the very moment when he was trying to explain who he is as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And so I first had to look up the word because the vocabulary, it wasn't new for me. Okay. And I remember he says, okay, it's basically someone who starts a new business. So I kind of sit there trying to understand, okay, someone who starts a new business. And honestly, I had zero understanding of the depth of that meaning at the time.
Right.
Because, the Koreans, they just don't like uncertainty. People like something secure. So particularly after the financial crisis that swept Asia in late 1990s.
Okay.
So 2 jobs became highly sought after: public school teachers and government workers. People just want something that, secure. Okay. So entrepreneurs are rare, and that kind of spirit is not really discussed, often. So it took a while after I go through a lot of hardships and kind of challenges with Brad. I just finally understood what that means to live with entrepreneur.
And we're still learning.
I thought it would speed up the education process when we were dating, and so I had this textbook on entrepreneurship. So I, started to walk her through that, and she said, "Okay, I think that's enough now." But what I really saw in Jooyoung is this spirit of overcoming, of triumph through struggle. There's a lot of challenges that she had already faced, whether it was with family, loss, academic challenges, and just seeing how she had surmounted all of those with tremendous grace and resilience. And I thought, well, that's a great quality for an entrepreneurial life.
Yes.
And everything else you don't know, you'll
So you
pick
kind
up
of
along
figure
the
out
way.
everything at that time, but it took a while for me to understand, who I married.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. And like I said, we're still learning, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So what were your expectations then as you all dated? And remind me how long you dated before.
It was really short. We started to have some discussion about a marriage, and that was a little bit early for Jooyoung. She wasn't ready for that. So we took a break from that. And after 6 months of thinking it through, she said, my heart's in the right place. I think let's explore this further. So it was...
So from that point, I think it was less than a year.
less than a year.
Yeah,
Okay.
about like 9-10 months. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when you began, again, back to you, Jooyoung, what were your expectations about work and what Brad would be doing and what that might look like in the future?
So at that time, he already had a business that he started here in Texas. So he started his first business before he actually even came to South Korea. So all I knew at the time was, it was still kind of small business. It was education, coaching business. But, he has a business, it's growing, and it's kind of big enough to at least kind of help us to pay bills. So that was all I knew, other than just this guy, and I'm marrying this amazing person, and we're going to start a new life in the States together.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you married, what year was that?
That was 2008. Julie was born, and 2007 we were married.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, how long it's going to take for him to do the math?
Born and then you got married. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And then when did you guys move to
So
Texas?
Julie was a year and a half or 2 years
So it
old
was
when we
actually
moved
at
back.
the end of 2009.
Yeah.
So about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she was just over a year old at
Yeah.
the time.
And was that the plan from the beginning to come back to the
It
States?
was to actually come back earlier, but because I started another business when we were there in South Korea that wasn't trending in the right direction.
It was almost like his hobby.
It required
Just start a new
more
one.
attention than we anticipated.
Yeah.
So we extended, I think, an additional 18 months because of that.
I think almost,
So,
yeah.
I think Julie was going to be born originally in,
I don't know, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. It took a little longer than we anticipated to move here.
Okay.
but we have a large family, all pretty much all here in San Antonio. So to be here with them as we're giving birth to children and raising family, that was really important to be together.
Yeah. Okay. So you came back 2009, did you say?
2009.
All right. And so let's talk a little bit about where you are currently. Tell us about the business that you're in the middle of starting. And you truly are a serial entrepreneur. This is not your first business. It's about your fourth or
Yes, I mean the second major business, but
Second
I had a
major.
number of other smaller
Ones that he
along the
started.
way.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Including some nonprofits.
okay.
the previous business that was a much different experience for our family and marriage than the one we're in now, because I had already started that prior to knowing Jooyoung.
Okay.
So when she came in, she really didn't understand what it is, how it generates income, where it's going. And she was, of course, very supportive in that, but there was a feeling of that's just kind of Brad's work that I do. So maybe a little bit more like a traditional job, because I go to the office and, I come back home and there's not as much intersection with what's happening as a family. But with the new business, that was something that we envisioned together. We worked on figuring out what is this going to be, and how much are we going to invest in this, and how are we going to make money from this. So there were a lot of conversations before actually venturing into the new business now.
Okay. And that's a good point, because a lot of couples One is the entrepreneur. Do you consider yourself entrepreneurial, Jooyoung, or what would you say are your strengths?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I would say I like doing something more, I guess, kind of academic, like something more like research, and that's more like my background. And I guess in some ways, like I like to take some like alternative ways of doing things, but not like him, not like studying something new, like on my own. And yeah, so this has been a kind of interesting journey.
Jooyoung says she's not an entrepreneur, but I think that entrepreneurship requires great teams with disparate views and areas of strength that are complementary and sometimes, very different, right? And that has helped us so much because Jooyoung is so different from me in that she sees things that I don't see. She asks questions that I'm not asking. Yet she's also giving me the permission to share my crazy visionary ideas that are mostly bad and to be patient and help process through that because I really need someone to process that with me. That's just kind of how I think. And so having that where I can be vulnerable with Jooyoung in that and not have to like figure it all out and then come and present a full plan, I really feel supported in that in a huge way.
Okay. And has it always been that way that you guys talked about the business and plans in the future, or has that evolved?
I think that's evolved more with the current business that we're in because Jooyoung has such a intimate knowledge of how it works and all of the challenges associated with it, what our vision is for it in the future. We've had an opportunity to really craft that together. I've been the one mostly to do the execution of that, but I mean, our conversations are always filled with what's happening with a new product that we're launching, a market we're moving into, investors we're bringing on, what's happening with various team members and employees. And, Jooyoung's a great counselor to me in that.
Awesome. So is it safe to say, Jooyoung, that you know most of the business? Currently.
I mean, a lot of details. Ins and outs. Yeah.
Do you like that? Because some couples, there are two camps. There are some entrepreneurs and more so men. From the research that I've looked at, men tend to kind of forge ahead with plans, may or may not bring along their significant other, their spouse. Whereas women entrepreneurs tend to seek input from their spouse. And I think it is a wise man that does seek the input from their spouse because, and especially when they're wired a little differently, because if one is more just not risk averse, but like you said, Jooyoung, you're not the one to go start something, but you are supportive of it and you understand how Brad is wired. And so those conversations that you invite her into, but I think it's important to point out that you had to make that intentional place to bring her into those conversations.
I think as far as that goes, I probably break the mold a bit there in that I am intentional in bringing Jooyoung into the conversation, maybe more than I should sometimes. But what I felt early on, even before marriage, is that I need a partner that really shares in the vision for what I'm doing, because the business is not just about finances. It should generate a profit. It should provide a great living for us and for our employees, and but it really is driven by a desire to impact people's lives. We serve students. We need to make sure that we are transforming them and launching them to do great things. So I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility in that. And because of that, I wanted to make sure that I married someone that can share that passion. So I think what brought us together, one of the things that brought us together was not so much like understanding entrepreneurship and what that means, but education and the value of being involved and helping others to develop themselves. So that's really been a big part of our conversations. I mean, all the time we're talking about different educational theories and approaches, different businesses that have different kinds of educational offerings, schools. Those are conversations that we both genuinely enjoy and can connect around. So it doesn't feel like we're just working on the business. You know, we're sharing a passion together. And that's huge for me.
So important, yes. So let's talk a little bit about where you guys are now. Jooyoung, you started a new venture this semester, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
So I started grad school last year, like doctoral degree in education field. It's international education, which I've been wanting to do for many years. And so very thankfully, I mean, when we first married, like, you know, he has been always in like education field, you know, like education technology, and that has been his passion, but which was not really my passion, but at that time when we first married, I
saw it in you.
I saw it in you. But just over the course of years, you know, I don't know, something happened, right? Of course, it didn't happen overnight, but just genuinely, I developed more interest in what he's doing, and so I'm just pursuing my doctoral degree in that area, and that has been also very helpful, just in our relationships and also what he's doing right now, because I actually have been helping him a lot with my research and writing some grant proposals for his company and things like that.
Oh,
so
that's
we
fantastic.
have come a long way, really.
And I'm so grateful for Jooyoung jumping in and using those talents, those skills that she has to support the business. And yet I have this sense that I really don't want to take that for granted or abuse that, but really to try to find the areas where she can take her skills and put that to work in an area where she feels it's meaningful. So, you know, those are conversations where I try to be careful and make sure that, you know, there's really good alignment with that. I don't know if I've always done the best with that, but I think we found a few things recently that have been really aligned with what you're doing in your doctoral studies, and then also a real help to the business.
I mean, we're on the same boat. We have to survive together.
You gotta make it work.
Right. And I think that is a challenge with every entrepreneur marriage. I know in our business, there was a time when I worked in the business, partly because there were some things that I could do, but it also became not a good place for me to be. So it's a fine line you walk to.
And I've seen that before, and I think our communication's been really open about that, where Jooyoung's shared with me what she likes doing or doesn't like doing, and so I felt the confidence in that, you know, for us to forge ahead together.
I think I really grew into this where I am right now. Like when we first married, and he always has been just like trying to share more about what he's doing. A lot of details, it's finances, but of course, you know, at the time I didn't have any, like even now, like I don't really have like business experience, you know, myself, you know, I'm doing more like, you know, academics and, you know, research and things like that. So when he tried to share a lot of details, like, I just have my kind of sense of, okay, feel like that's too much. Feel like that's not going to work. I think that's a good idea. But I just couldn't really speak to him with confidence because of my lack of, you know, experience. But just over the course of years, you know, I got to know him better. And I got to understand what are his weaknesses and strengths. And I also like kind of experienced it kind of like almost like firsthand with him. Like, through his own.
Very firsthand.
So grow together.
Now I'm at the place that I can kind of speak to him a little bit with a little more confidence about, okay, honey, I don't think that's going to work. You know, I don't think that's realistic. Or I think that's a really great idea, you know.
But here's another important point in that relationship is I feel the support, the validation from Jooyoung because I know she believes in me.
Right.
So I don't delay and saying, hey, here's something that I'm thinking about, or like to move in this direction, because I know at the end of the day, I've got that support.
Yes.
And that is just so huge for me. I don't know that I could really do this without it, because I mean, everything we have is on the line. It's all there, all in, more than I would like to be, actually.
Exactly.
Where I try to separate out, the family finances and the business, but
at the end of the day,
when push comes to shove, it's like the business is going to survive. It's going to move forward. So, but I really know that June believes in me, and you just communicate that through so many ways. And there's times where you question, you got concern, and we stress out together. But at the end of the day, I know you believe in me.
Yeah. I want to ask a question about kind of boundaries, and then move into more of the business, what it is you're doing now. And it's wonderful to have a team, to be a team together. Flip side is, how do you create boundaries around not talking about business, or how do you guys handle that?
I don't do a good job of that to begin with. Yeah. We talk about it, all the time, so much, right?
We do almost kind of feel like, what are you going to talk about if you don't talk about business?
Now we'll talk about the kids.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But it is a little bit different in that it's not just like, okay, here's like financially what's happening in the business. There's aspects of, there's this student, this apprentice that is in the program and they're going through a hard time. But then there was this mentor, and they discovered like this new purpose they have that's really motivating them to do great work. And so like sharing those kind of stories is really interesting.
The victories.
And the victories and just people's life and what we're discovering too about different educational models and solutions. And, I was at a conference in San Diego for education technology investors a couple weeks ago. And so coming back with like new ideas and what other investors are doing and some thought leaders and, sharing those stories is I think interesting for us. It's business related. It helps us to be better at our game, but it also is something that's really interesting. So, but yeah, we talk about it too much.
Yeah. And also I would say just like, talking about our hobbies, like besides business, I know Brad loves gardening. So that's something that he loves to talk about.
Oh,
and
that's
also,
good.
So I think that kind of provides some healthy kind of like balance, and also for me, I like to paint and I like to, doing some music, working on my cello. I started learning cello a few years ago. Because of his encouragement, I didn't really expect that I would start a new instrument at almost at the age of 40, but he really encouraged me to do that, and that has been really fun for me. So having something different that we like besides talking about business. So I think
those are great things to experience together.
Yeah.
And I just love appreciating and observing and being part of your artistic pursuits.
And then we both love traveling, so just dreaming about, okay, what's going to be our next place.
That's true. We do talk a lot about trips that we like to take.
Right.
Together, right?
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. It gives you, it's not just about this business that one day is going to, tip and make that revolution and we can sit back and enjoy a little more, but it's, what are we going to enjoy in the process? I think that is so
But there are challenges.
important.
I mean, it's allowed us to enjoy things in the process.
Right.
We've done really fun trips together. But there's times where we've had to put those on hold too.
Right.
So a lot of just fluctuation
Yes,
in
you guys,
our life experience. Right?
You had a trip planned.
Yeah, that was last year.
Last year.
Yeah, that was real. Boy, I didn't even talk about that today. How do I really go there?
It was really
painful.
stressful. Yeah.
That was one of my biggest mistakes in business leadership, family, marriage. Just having this, amazing trip planned to Germany, And Jooyoung had done all the research for it, booked everything.
I literally booked everything, including museums and just literally everything.
Like 5 days before,
like one week before,
I had to cancel it because I did not foresee what was happening. Operationally, we're not in a good place, the place I thought we were. So I just needed to be all over the situation. And couldn't be anywhere else until that was taken care of. So, and it was actually like 2 months of really intense, difficult work where I was pretty much gone, right? For 2 months, resolving that situation. So, we've had to make those sacrifices as well.
It was like almost like a dream trip, but hopefully in the future.
Hopefully
it's all planned, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Hopefully there will be another chapter, but that is one of the realities, isn't it, of entrepreneurship is you make plans, but they don't always, they probably never move forward exactly as we intend.
Yes.
Or think they will.
There's so much uncertainty. I mean, not that every business needs to be built that way, but I think that's more my nature. I'm like an open-ended. I'm a ENTP, typology. Jooyoung is ENFP, so we both have that perceiving P, where you are open to new experiences and adventures, right? Which is great for us both to be able to adjust as life situations are sometimes throwing us in a different direction that is not so comfortable. But then to realize it's part of the journey. We're going to work through it and get on the other side of it.
Yeah, that commitment to keep working at it. What are some things that you guys did when it was hard? And I would imagine there was a little bit of resentment, Jooyoung, about having to cancel that for a moment or two.
Well, that wasn't the first time. I mean, we were in a difficult place in the sale of the previous business where before the sale was completed, working things through with my partners and the whole buyout process, we had to put our house on the market. We had to sell... move some assets around, sell things off. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of pain during that time, right?
Well, you said we sold a car. That's all we had. Yeah.
Right?
We sold our car. Yeah,
business,
you said asset.
Right? The asset was the business.
You didn't sell any of
we didn't even have an asset to sell. We just sold a car. Yeah.
Okay. So, you're watching the cash day by day, realizing that you just have, a few more weeks, and those are very painful places to be in. I'm grateful that Jooyoung didn't resent that.
But I don't have any desire to go through that kind of process again. It was really bad.
Can we say one and done? We'll see.
And even like where we're living now, we're grateful for the location we have and the neighborhood and being close by family and everything. It's worked out really well for us. But even that process is filled with uncertainty. Getting a loan, having to try multiple times just because you don't have the kind of income that normal people have. So
exactly. We were in that situation, applying for a loan, and our banker said, I can loan to the people that work for you easier than I can for you. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize.
Right?
When you're the founder, you pay the salaries of everyone else, but they look at you differently.
And there's no guarantees in that process. So I think there's just a need to hold things loosely. And I think that's something that I'm pretty good at. Jooyoung's probably learned a lot with too.
You were one of the most optimistic people I know, Brad. And so when you say hold things loosely, I think optimism goes with it also. Would you call yourself an optimist, Jooyoung? Or how are you guys alike and different?
I mean, of course, I try to look at more kind of bright sides, right?
Okay.
But I can say that I'm the one who can provide more kind of practical and realistic perspectives,
More the realist.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's move to your current business. Brad, tell us what that business is, how long it's been going, the concept.
Yeah, so really the education ventures I've been involved in have been to figure out how do we help students or talent move through their education and their work in a way where they find the critical path. There's not wasted time, there's not wasted money, where we end up with debt and having to set dreams aside. So how do we help people really find that purpose and then get on that path as soon as possible? So the current business is focused on how do we launch recent grads, mostly recent grads, into careers in marketing, if that's where they have a vision. It's really hard today to move into those roles because they're filled with technology, and that technology, those platforms, those tools are not provided access to in college. So you've got a whole generation that really is in this very difficult place of looking at these, high value, high impact jobs, and yet they all require 3 to 5 years experience. So what we've done is create something to bridge that, an apprenticeship. It's the first digital marketing apprenticeship. Recently, we were recognized by the Department of Labor for launching this. So that was a real milestone for us. Before that, we were really venturing into uncharted territory, hoping that we'd be able to get that kind of recognition. Now that we have that, we actually have a business. For the first couple of years, we didn't know.
So you had a concept.
We had the concept.
You
and
were
we
in
had
the
students
process
going through, but there's not the viability if we can't get the Department of Labor, because that brings the validation, that brings funding, that brings opportunity for us to have all kinds of academic partnerships. And so now that this is in place, the business is starting to move forward, and there's an opportunity to engage investors and get the funding we need to bring it to the next level. So it's a really exciting place to be in right now, but it's been fraught with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk, which we knew.
Until you have the investor, until you have that grant hit your account, still.
And still there is, but we know that we've created something of tremendous value at this point. So that's very reassuring. And it's just been a walk of faith, a walk of persistence and not giving up. It's taken longer than we thought it would. We're probably 12 months, 18 months behind where I thought we would be in terms of how long it would take.
When did you start this one, digital, and the name of it?
In Digital Creative Institute.
Okay.
Yes.
And when did you actually start it?
We had our first group of students, apprentices, go through in January 2016 is when they launched.
2016. And
2016. And prior to that,
far before that, did you have to run up?
For a year, we were really working on the whole concept and putting together, marketing and curriculum and just everything to be able to launch. And it's slow with an education business because you have to see education take place over the course of time, right?
Yes.
So in addition to a business model, you also have an education model, the pedagogy that you have to prove out. And so this is a 12-month apprenticeship. It takes, starting in January 16, well, it's not until the beginning of 2017 where you see the full result of that, right? And then starting with the next cycle. So at this point, we've had 70 apprentices go through. Still it's a relatively small group, but they've proven out the model, and we have 87% are rated by their employers as high performing, high potential. We have 100% of them all currently employed in the occupation they've trained in, which is digital marketing.
Outstanding.
Hardly any education programs can say that today, so we're really proud of that. So we're getting some great results. We have a good foundation to build off of, but there's been so much uncertainty in this. And, a lot of it, too, is just timing. The current presidential administration pumping a lot of money into apprenticeships, didn't happen until very recently. I was recently at a meeting with the Department of Labor and other Fortune 500 businesses, Visa, IBM, Sprint, huge players that are looking at this whole apprenticeship piece. And what we heard from the Department of Labor is they now have $1 billion under management to fund apprenticeships, whereas just a couple of years ago, it was probably a tenth of that. So it's really the timing as well. And, that's where there's risk in any business. And it's just tough. But my wife is so resilient to be in that with me, to embrace that journey.
I'm looking
together.
at her muscles growing.
Absolutely. It amazes me.
So am I right? 2015 is when you launched?
2015 is when we began the preparation. Yeah, build the foundation for that. 2016 is really the launch. Yeah, the first class. Mm-hmm.
So you had the concept, proof of concept. You're kind of in the scaling phase. How have you funded it till now? I mean, there's not a money tree.
That's right. We funded it from the proceeds of the prior business.
Okay. And
through the revenue that we're generating in the current business. We're not cash positive at this point. So eager to get to cash neutral. That was supposed to happen
out of our pocket.
But we're still working towards that. We're really close.
Okay.
Yeah.
How... in that process, when you have your plan and you have to work it, how do you keep that optimism and keep yourself moving forward when
it's hard? I mean, every time I go to the bank and take out more money to put into the business, it's just really hard to have those conversations with Jooyoung where I feel like, all right, I had this plan. It didn't work out. Like there's good things that are happening in the business, but still financially, we're going to have to make more of a commitment and other adjustments that we didn't plan for. Mm-hmm. So that's been...
I mean, definitely has been kind of up and downs, like I see Brad, I mean, you can totally hear his passion.
Yes.
He's talking about his business and he always has been that way, just like he's so passionate about like providing better education like solutions, and he has been kind of social entrepreneur, but I have seen him like a little bit kind of downcast. That kind of feels like one day I feel like it's gonna be all just like great and happening, but one day he feels like, is that really gonna like take off? When is it gonna happening? So definitely has been a challenge, but we'll see. Like he said, this year we see more like momentum in the business and then more like funding opportunities, like grant opportunities available. And still apprenticeship is new. And I kind of saw that on your face as you're hearing about, oh, really? Like there has been more like a funding like that. But we still see the potential, and that kind of brought us here. And hopefully, we'll just be able to seize more opportunities this year so that we can kind of feel like, okay, now we have business.
Okay. So you kind of have some markers, whether they're conscious or not, but
there are markers. And that's really important, is that we've determined, okay, like what are we going to invest? How far are we going to go? We're committed, but how committed are we?
I gotta discuss more about that.
So I've had to come back and renegotiate those markers to say, okay, the plan didn't go.
We're not where we thought we would be.
Now we've got to be more committed. This requires selling another house that we have and taking those funds and putting them into the business. So we had to look at that and get on the same page with that. I don't know if there was a choice or not. We talked it through, and we recognized together, like, okay, this is needed, and it's the right decision for the business, for our family. So I think that kind of, renegotiating things along those milestones is really important.
I came across a term years ago in my counseling work, enthusiastic agreement. And it's so important for couples to talk things through until they have enthusiastic agreement, because if you're not quite there, somebody's going to have some resentment. And it's not uncommon for entrepreneurs to be very action oriented and to say, well, we talked about it, but it was like maybe we hadn't quite decided. But I hear that you guys
We've
have a
had
really
those
nice
moments too. Absolutely.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
I like getting to yes and moving forward, actioning to, right?
Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?
So I really like that concept of, you said enthusiastic
agreement. Not just, well,
so
whatever.
that's a great word for me. I need to take that personally and
Enthusiastic.
put that to more work in our conversations.
Yeah, yeah. But it is another reality of the entrepreneur life, isn't it? That sometimes you get so far in, it's like okay, well, there's no going back. And that's part of the commitment, right? Is, okay, we have to find a way forward. We are so far into this that, you know, and yet it's tempting sometimes to maybe just say, can't you just go get a job, Brad? I mean,
I even said that once, I think.
I'm sure we all have. Yes. When I say those words, Brad, just go get a job, what does that do to you?
It makes me feel incompetent, incapable.
Really?
It's almost like an end of your world.
Yeah, the end of my identity as I know it, right? I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur. There's a lot of business owners where that happened after really getting to know their industry through working in it, but that's just kind of how I started. Before we were married, that's what I was doing, even as entrepreneurial endeavors. So that's really how I see myself and putting my skills to work. So it's kind of hard to envision like another reality outside of that.
That is who you are, and that is who you are married to, and forward you go. So in your current business, so you're about 4 years into it. Not quite where you wanted to be, but you're seeing the momentum, as you said, Jooyoung, that gives you hope to keep moving forward. You know, again, none of us have perfect marriages. That's not what this podcast is about. We do struggle, and we fall down, and we skin our knees, and we have to ask forgiveness, and we have to make a new plan. And it requires humility sometimes, but okay, tomorrow's a new day, and we keep moving forward in a way that improves our marriage, improves the business. So it's something I admire very much about the Voellers, is your ability to do that. It really, it's obvious from the outside.
It's been tough. I mean, it is not something that I probably would have the stomach for if I didn't begin this journey, this lifestyle prior to marriage. I don't know if I could carry through the way I am now. I just can't imagine like having the safety of a regular paycheck and a career mapped out, and then launching into a business with all of the uncertainty and all the challenges, and that I think would be much more difficult than, I mean, this is all I've known. So I just have done it. But I've made so many mistakes along the way, really, misjudging how much it's going to cost and how much time it's going to take, right? And Jooyoung's been so gracious with me to, she'll show some of the frustrations, some of the anxiety at times. We work through that and talk through it. I think relatively quickly, and that helps. So I just have an amazing wife that makes it possible. Really, I couldn't do it without the kind of support that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you learned through some of the challenges? You said you've made a lot of mistakes. No one is perfect. I've heard Mark say many times, failure is not the end. It's a matter of whether or not you learn from it. So what are some things you've learned, or how has it changed you, Brad, through some of the challenges that you've experienced over the years in building the various businesses?
A lot of lessons. Listen to my wife's counsel, and to balance the optimism with the realism, to seek out counsel. Jooyoung's great at providing that, but she also asked me, okay, well, what does this business advisor think, or who are you gonna run this by to ensure that it does have
it's
legs
not
under
just all your ideas,
right? So that certainly is a huge lesson, because I can get really fixated on an idea or a vision that I have. Another lesson is just the right people in the journey. That's more about business, the right people in the right positions, and I've made that. I mean, every entrepreneur makes that mistake of not having the right person.
Right, that's
there.
hard.
But hopefully you have less of that over time. And every time it happens, I just kick myself like, I should have seen it. I should have known, or I should have been better in my vetting process. But that typically is the thing that will throw off business plans and execution more than anything else. It's just not the right person in the right seat, not the right partnering relationship, not the right buyer, customer. Those relationships are really the key to get that right. So for me, it comes down to understanding the values of the people that I'm working with, really getting at that. And then, what do they prefer? Really, what's their natural inclination in terms of the work that they would do to ensure that there's strong alignment there. So something I'm still working at. Other lessons along the way? What can you think of that I've been learning?
What about equal partnership? And do you want to speak to that too?
Partnerships can be challenging for sure. Every partnership is challenging. I think that it's important to have clarity around how partnerships are structured. If you don't make sure that there's absolute certainty of how this works, especially when things don't go according to plan, then that's just asking for trouble. And I think that's kind of common advice you hear out there, but it can't be said enough.
Yeah. And as an optimist, it's really hard to think about worst case scenario, which is kind of what is required when you're looking at a partnership.
Yes.
Is you have to consider that. What is the worst case scenario? What if this just doesn't work out, or something dramatically changes in our relationship? Because with every partnership, there's the potential that partnership doesn't move forward. But it's really hard, don't you think?
We talk about a postmortem in business. Okay, we executed on this plan. We thought it'd go well. It failed. Why did it fail? I've also heard the concept of a premortem, to look at, all right, if this plan was to go wrong, what would cause it to go wrong? And anticipating that, kind of doing that analysis in the front end before you've put in all the time and the money.
Right.
So that's something that I really need to do more of. I think Jooyoung helps me in that.
I'm
certainly
good
advisors
at saying
help
it will
in
take
that.
at least twice as much.
Yeah.
It will take at least twice as longer.
Yeah.
Twice as long to develop the business.
to develop something, and then twice as much funds, and to do something.
I think I've said something similar.
At least 3 times,
Yeah.
So it's going to take longer, take more money, take more effort than they think.
Any other lessons that you can think of that have humbled and kept us grounded?
I don't know.
Or what you've learned that you would, maybe if y'all were sitting with a couple 10 years behind you that is talking about?
I would say maybe you need to know when to stop. It's so as an entrepreneur, you just pour so much into it. So it's really hard to stop. You just feel if
stop for the day, do you mean? Or stop the business? Like it's not going to
some
work.
kind of whatever endeavor you're working on. I mean, of course, stop the whole business. It's a whole different, conversation.
Okay, so you're talking about just
whatever is
transition.
it could be some kind of some project you're trying to develop, like new product.
A project or a product.
Right.
Yeah. A new market.
I mean, if you have to stop the business, maybe that's why you have to do it. But even within your business, you're just trying to you started something new, like, new kind of project. And then because you have still poured into so much into that.
Emotionally, you get committed to
it is so hard to just feel that. It is really hard to see that it might not work out,
Or when it is not working out, to just recognize
still,
that.
right. You still want to just
cut bait and go.
Have you read Seth Godin's The Dip?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, that's
about
really
that,
good. Yeah,
how
to know what kind of a dip it is, because we all go through those dips, right?
And how to know when it's a dip or a cul-de-sac. And,
I know, that's hard.
I think he talks about relationship dips too, and how to understand, is this a relationship that's meant to be, or is it the wrong relationship? So those are really important questions to ask. And I can get so consumed in just doing of the business that I'm not taking the time to really evaluate, should this even be done anymore?
Right. I think for that sense, it's really important to have good advisors around you. Can really speak the truth with love.
Can you talk about that a little more? Do you have some advisors in your life? I mean, you and Mark met through C12 several years ago.
A peer advisory board, tremendous resource. Getting that outside, unbiased, objective perspective. Mentors that have had, board members, that's all critical. There's key people that are in my industry of apprenticeships and education technology that I go to regularly for input on different questions of execution with our business model. And people like Mark, right, that just have great common sense to help you ask the right questions that you should be asking. So those are fantastic conversations. Right now, I'm in the midst of, now that we have formed the basis for this company and pursuing investment, forming a board for this. And so that's going to provide even a lot more stability and direction. I think, the earlier you can get that established, the better. That's game changing, just to bring the diversity of opinion and also, have some braking function along with the gas.
Slow down.
Slow down.
Well, what I think goes along with that, Brad, is the willingness to take advice or even ask questions. Have you always been open to, seeking out a mentor or advisor or someone, or is that something that has evolved for you?
I think it was part of the culture that I was raised with in our family growing up. My friends were actually mostly older than me, and they were established in their careers even as a kid. My parents wanted me to hang out with a doctor, a lawyer, a botanist, and we understand kind of their worlds and the work they did. And so these people, for whatever reason, they took interest in me and would help bring me into that world so I could kind of get a sense of that and get their mentoring and ask questions. And my parents helped me to understand how to ask questions. So I think that really was helpful in tempering my hard-headedness of just being really stubborn. When I get an idea in my head, I'll just keep driving at it. And it's hard for me sometimes to hear a perspective or an opinion that I'm not looking for, and to really just set aside my preconceived notions of what needs to happen and just really listen to that without the emotion of, but I'm just going to do this plan anyway, so help me do this plan. So I still struggle with that a lot, but fortunately my upbringing maybe helped balance some of that, where I know it's something that I need at least. I can't say I'm good at it still, but it's something that I value. I definitely value it.
And I think, again, it shows a lot of wisdom for your age.
I'm older than you think now.
She's still older than you are.
No, I'm older than she is.
Yeah,
Yes.
he
Oh,
is.
did I get that wrong earlier?
You got that wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, never
She
mind.
had just become younger,
Ignore
and
me.
I got older.
So I always like to ask this question, and you've spoken to it a little bit earlier in the interview, but what do you guys do to keep the fun, friendship, and intimacy growing in your marriage?
That's a hard question for me, really, because I'm just so hardcore. Like, we're gonna get the mission done. We're gonna go up to the mission. We're gonna make this happen, right? So that's hard for me. But I'll let you answer first.
I think it helps me to see him encourage me to do more like the things that I like to do. Like I know like he's so into his business, but he has been so supportive of what I want to do too.
Okay.
Like pursuing grad school or like pursuing like learning cello, and even like trying to like paint, it was actually all his idea. He was because of
June's
his
an amazing
encouragement.
artist.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've seen your art.
I mean,
That's
like,
beautiful.
I didn't really like paint until I moved here because I didn't have really opportunities or, and also like, you choose you go to college, choose your major, and you think that, I'm not artistic, that's for something, someone else, someone for more creative. But after we moved here, we bought our first house, and Brad he just like, one day, seemingly out of nowhere, he just told me, why don't you paint and put something on the walls? Because we just bought a house. We have to fill our walls with something. And I kind of felt like, oh my goodness, here he goes again with all his crazy ideas. But I don't know, for some reason, something kind of moved in me. So I thought, after all, our walls were empty. So I thought I gotta do something. So anyway, I kind of, digressed a little bit. But like for him, to be supportive of like what I want to do, and sometimes he kind of like suggests something that he thinks that I will enjoy, and I think that has been they put some kind of boundary. It's not just always about his work, his business, and
And I really enjoy talking about the pursuits that Jooyoung's engaged in and different areas of developing her skills or people she's connecting with, and just sharing those conversations is always a lot of fun and fascinating for me. So that's I think that's one way that we keep it balanced. But it's not like we're the perfect couple who every week Friday night we're on dates and doing these fun things on the town.
We're working on that.
We're working on that. And I don't feel like I'm very good in that category. I think just practically more connecting around what Jooyoung really enjoys and enjoying that with her. So that's, I guess it
kind of
probably
getting
sounds
into
kind of simple, but that's how we enjoy each other, I think. And then the work that we do too, the fact that we both enjoy that work and can value that together. So that helps a lot.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for your time again. And Brad, if someone wants to follow up with the business, where can they find you? And we'll actually, I'll put that in the show notes, but go ahead and tell us.
Yeah. Digital Creative Institute. You can find us there if you Google us. My email address is Brad V for Voeller, Brad V at digitalcreativeinstitute.com.
Okay.
So happy to connect there.
Great. And again, I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
It's been
you.
great.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. You can find a full transcript and show notes at kathyrushing.com. That's Kathy with a K, rushing.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on any of your favorite listening platforms. And remember, subscribing is free, so sign up and never miss an episode. Do you know someone else that could benefit from this episode? You would be a great friend to share it with them. Now remember, you're building a life together. Make it a great one. Until next time, see ya.